Thanks for coming on the show. This is the host, NFL Goal Line with Nick and Phil. He pairs with Phil Nunziata, 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, here on National Sports, on air on Spreaker.com. This guy has great football insight when in regards to the NFL. He consumed the NFL coverage for Week 2, and what occurred in this Week 2, the wildest and wackiest week, in my opinion, I've probably ever seen, and probably will be in this whole entire season. And I have to ask you, Nick, by the way, thanks for coming, but I gotta ask you, as someone who saw this week, do you see any teams that made the playoffs last year that really shocked you in how poorly they performed, that you think they will not make the playoffs this year?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, and it's always a pleasure. Looking for another great show, and heading over to the NFL, a lot of surprises in week number 2. You mentioned a wacky week of football, and nothing bigger than, replacement officials. Just going over that topic, I'm sure you'll get to that later on in the show. But honestly, the replacement officials were awful. But one of the teams, getting to your question, that one of those teams that certainly showed that they cannot make the playoffs after 2 weeks. Nothing worse than the New Orleans Saints, winner of the NFC South last year, and in my mind, contention for the worst defense in the NFL right now because of just how poorly they played. The Carolina Panthers are a tremendous offense, but they got blown out of the door in that game. And in week 1, again, another pathetic effort on the defensive side, and right now the 0-2 Saints, no matter how good they play down the stretch, right now this defense is a cause for concern. And right now, Sean Payton, no matter how many players are on suspension or not, Sean Payton certainly missed over New Orleans.
I agree. I actually have to go to the other conference. I'm a little bit surprised by Cincinnati. Would you agree with that?
No, well, certainly that the defensive side of the ball needs emphasis. Another team that almost lost to a team like the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Browns are one of the most pathetic offenses in the league, and they almost lost that game if it weren't for a tremendous play by, I forget his name, but certainly a big play down the stretch. But right now, the defense needs to get things going.
I have to agree with that. In regards, by the way, if Cleveland won that game, I think it would have been raining cats and dogs, and I think the whole world would be in chaos.
There'd be a new holiday over in Cleveland for Sunday's game if they won.
Yeah, I truly, when you look at this at the end of the score and you looked at the highlight, Trent Richardson put on a show, right? He did superb, but I kind of want to move on. I want to talk about the other side, the impressive teams, the teams that didn't make the playoffs, or teams that you think have an opportunity to get in that mix, to possibly get in that Super Bowl contender mix, teams that you think can really spark a huge run in January.
One of those surprising teams, Cameron, is, and this will shock a lot of people, but one of only 6 teams that are 2-0 right now, and right now they're seemingly flying under the radar, especially because of that Week 1 performance, but the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, right now they're tying for the NFL lead right now with 9 turnovers. That's not going to get it done, and Andy Reid right now is on the hot seat, and he's certainly been on the hot seat seemingly every year of his career, but right now the Eagles are not playing good football, but it's interesting how they're 2-0. They're winning in very convincing, or very impressive fashion. Down the stretch, Michael Vick having some key drives, but obviously it's one of those things. The Eagles right now are not playing good football, and they're winning. So it's interesting how once this offense gets going along, the defense has already come to play. Their defense has played very good against 2 pretty good offenses. Baltimore certainly can throw the ball down the field, and Ray Rice is a damn dynamic guy to the backfield. So Philadelphia, when they get their offense going, look for this team to be deep into the playoff picture, because right now all they need is those cut-down turnovers in order to be a tremendous football team down the stretch.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'll go on the Philly bandwagon. It's just been a little bit concerning to me that they've kind of won the hard way, you know, with the comebacks, with the drive against the Browns that they really kind of struggled through, or against Baltimore they had to make some really key big plays. I have to give them credit for coming back and responding with that toughness. It was actually the opposite, where last year they'd lose leads. They'd struggle in the fourth quarter. They wouldn't be able to make that play that mattered most. And I think it really shows how far this team has come. And I think that's pretty impressive. But I kind of want to go from the players to the zebras, the men with the whistles, and I have to go and talk about these replacement refs. And I just, it's been egregious so far. I think it's terrible football displayed. I don't want substitute teachers and calling games without enough necessary training and not enough rest, and they don't know what the system is like. They take forever to make calls. They make questionable calls. Do you think the replacement refs are hurting this game? And do you think viewership and the brand of the NFL will be hurt just solely on the refs?
Well, certainly, Cameron, you have some very good points, though. And honestly, it's a shame that the NFL might not hurt as much as you would expect. I mean, there is some terrible refereeing, and the officiating certainly will be missed. I mean, it looks like the starting officials will be back for Week 5, but we'll have to wait and see on that. But I go back to last night's game between the Broncos and the Falcons. We had an hour-long first quarter that included, it could have been 4 or 5 potential fights. We had one big one where after Michael Turner fumbled, something like 6 or 7 minutes went by before the officials did anything. We had a fight where not only did the players get into the scrum, players on the sideline get onto the field, and the coaching staff gets in the mix, and all of a sudden the officials get roughed up. Some officials get pushed on the ground. Referees, no clue what they're doing, and the discipline certainly needs work. And right now, the brand of football right now is not shown, and this is really an embarrassment to the NFL, and certainly upstairs to a guy like Roger Goodell. He certainly has to be scratching his head to why we're letting these guys officiate these games. And the NFL is all about speed. Speed of the game. And right now, the speed has slowed down tremendously. And we're seeing plays where officials will take 5, 6, 7 minutes to determine a call that the viewers at home could make within 30 seconds. It's all about these officials. I mean, they're doing the best job that they can, but certainly it's hurting the National Football League. These guys need to go back to college.
I agree, and there were times where, I was at the New England game, and for some odd reason, the whole crowd was shocked. It was a critical play on third down. It was like 3rd and 5, and Arizona called a timeout, and the refs throw a flag on the field and then say, "Excuse me, everyone, that flag was used for a timeout." It doesn't make any. It doesn't make any. Like the whole entire crowd was like, "Oh no, here we go again," because New England had a ton of penalties. They thought, "Oh, here we go. New England's gonna suffer through another penalty." All of a sudden, I've noticed this too. I think I saw this in Week 1. Sometimes they just throw out the flag if they ever get confused. It just doesn't make any sense. And you know what also, to me, that really doesn't make any sense is the integrity of some of these replacement refs. We've seen 2 instances. One instance, Sunday morning, Pacific time, we got news that one ref was a Saints fan and was shown with tailgating at a Saints game with jerseys on with everything, with the everything, probably a Saints sweatshirt, Saints hat, and he said, he loves the Saints, and he even admitted on his Facebook page, so the NFL took him out of the game. Also, in Philly, there was an instance where LaShawn McCoy said that one replacement ref told him that he has him on his fantasy football team, and it to me, it seems like the credibility of the NFL has gone down the tube. I also heard from Pete Prisco that Ed Hockley was rooting for a team before he came to the NFL. I don't see that as a big of a deal. Some people are, but it just seems like the credibility with these replacement refs is not just down the drain. It's terrible. I've never seen, it's almost turning into, the NBA where they have the Tim Donaghy issue, and USA Today says NFL is ripe for corruption. It's just absolutely terrible, and I want to hear what you think about the credibility and the integrity of the game now with the implementation of these NFL refs.
Absolutely. Well, honestly, you just hope that this hasn't ruined the season for some of these teams, because let's go no further than last year when the Giants squeaked into the playoffs. They had one win late down the stretch. They beat the Cowboys, go on a 6-game run, and win the Super Bowl. One of those games turned into a loss. Partner, they're not even making the playoffs. And the Giants, the best team in the NFL, don't win the Super Bowl, don't even make the postseason. So for this year, it could come down to that. And early on in the year, these referees certainly changing the pace of the game. And from the integrity standpoint, as you mentioned earlier, it seems that the NFL, because that isn't a huge issue, having, being a Saints fan, I'm sure some of the biggest referees and officials, most well-known in the league, certainly are slanted to one team. I mean, if you're a follower of football, you certainly need to be a fan of a team, and seemingly, a lot of people are that way. But honestly, I think this is more the NFL being frustrated with the product from the referee standpoint, and the referee greats such as Mike Carey and Ed Hockley it's one of those things where they just have to sit back and watch terrible referee and officiating, and honestly, I think the NFL is just getting frustrated putting this terrible product, and for a league that prides itself on such a big attendance, it certainly will see a drop off in production value, because now the NFL, it's turned into an embarrassment right now, and certainly Roger Goodell needs to be on the hot seat. I hope that he's on his way out the door, because right now some terrible calls, having these tremendous refs not even officiating this big game.
I totally agree. That was the last question. I thank you so much for coming here. I just want to say, though, to me, and I agree with you, with the egregious football part, and Mike, I wonder if or when these refs are coming back, because Jerry Jones said this is going to be a long process. So I have no clue about that. I just hope we get back to these NFL, the true, real NFL refs. This is, it really is causing conspiracy theories. And one thing that I love about the NFL is the integrity of the game. And here, it causes... No, it shows that the NFL might not have the same integrity, and I hope that gets fixed soon, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Cameron. And honestly, just one final comparison, because these NFL referees that are right now officiating these games, it's similar to, as you mentioned at the very top, and my co-host for the NFL Goal Line, Phil Nunziata, said it first, but these referees are a bunch of substitute teachers out here trying to control a fast-paced, very energetic, and high-speed game. And when you have replacement officials trying to control that, certainly they're not doing a very good job. And then when you also have off-the-field issues with, the integrity of these officials and not even knowing what to do. These guys are completely underprepared. I mean, there needs to be some sort of discipline put on these referees just